Hi, I'm Ray from Phone Arena and I have a question for you. Which is better, a phablet or a smartphone? And exactly where do we draw the line between these two types of devices? Is it the size of the screen that determines if we should place a device in one category or the other, or is it the overall dimensions of the device itself? Why do I ask all of these questions? Well, it's because we're going to compare the Galaxy Note 3 phablet and the Xperia Z1 smartphone. The thing is that the Note 3 is actually among the more gracious phablets money can buy right now, while the Z1 is definitely among the bigger Android flagship smartphones. Let's stick with the design topic for a moment. We absolutely have to make the point that in terms of size, the Xperia Z1 is dangerously close to the Note 3. Still, as big as the Z1 is, it's still slightly smaller than the Note 3, making it feel a bit more comfortable to use. So, even though it's unprecedentedly big, the Xperia Z1 is the easier to operate handset of the two. Size is really important, but appearance and build quality should also be considered. This is where the Xperia Z1 simply blows the Galaxy Note 3 out of the water. The glass and metal casing of the Z1 presents users with a much more exquisite design that not only looks better but feels much more solid as well. Meanwhile, the Note 3 offers you a run-of-the-mill plastic body that simulates a leather finish. The Samsung doesn't feel cheap or anything, but it's far from the classiness presented by some other companies on the market such as Sony, HTC or Apple. Sadly, when it comes to the feel of the physical buttons, the Z1 doesn't do anything that much better compared to the Note 3, as its keys are quite small and don't necessarily feel so clicky. It does, however, feature a camera shutter that is quite good. Both handsets are charged using their micro-USB ports, but there is an important difference here, as the port of the Note 3 is USB 3.0 compatible, meaning that if you have a USB 3.0 port on your computer, you'll be enjoying faster transfer speeds and charging, as long as you're using the compatible cable. So, the Xperia Z1 doesn't have a fancy USB 3.0 port, but what it does have is a certain degree of ruggedness with its IP58 certification, which means that it's both dust and waterproof. Meanwhile, the Note 3 has its hallmark feature, the S Pen stylus, which allows you to take handwritten notes or draw. Even though they are very close in terms of size, the Note 3 sports a significantly larger 5.7-inch 1080p screen compared to the Z1's 5-inch 1080p one. Samsung is introducing regular improvements to its Super AMOLED screens, and we're happy to see that with the Note 3 the company has almost eliminated the problem with troublesome outdoor visibility such displays usually suffer from. As a result, the phablet's panel is almost as bright and easy to see as that of the Xperia Z1. Meanwhile, the Z1 utilizes a TFT panel with no IPS deck, which makes it appear quite washed out when viewed at an angle, despite the true luminous enhancements. That said, there is no escaping the fact that the screen of the Z1 produces a much more realistic image quality. With the Note 3, everything is somewhat unpleasantly greenish or bluish due to insufficient red color. It may not seem so obvious if you don't use a reference, but the moment you see both screens side by side, it becomes blatantly obvious that Samsung still has a lot of work ahead of it when it comes to ironing out all the kinks of its Super AMOLED screen technology. While the Xperia Z1 features Android 4.2.2, the Galaxy Note 3 is treating its users to the slightly newer experience of Android 4.3. Of course, both handsets are also equipped with custom user interfaces. On the Xperia Z1 we have Sony's custom UI, which covers pretty much all of the core OS applications. The same goes for the Galaxy Note 3, which features Samsung's TouchWiz Nature UX. As far as polish and uniformity goes, we would say that Sony has done a slightly better job overall. But in terms of bonus features, Samsung has created one really impressive list of additional goodies, including S-Health, Samsung Hub, Samsung Apps, S-Beam, and so on and so forth. There are no compromises when it comes to the silicon powering these two, as both are featuring the state-of-the-art Snapdragon 800 chipset. This ultra-powerful SoC brings a quad-core Crate 400 CPU, clocked at 2.2 GHz in the Xperia Z1 and 2.3 GHz in the Galaxy Note 3. Naturally, there is also the Adreno 330 GPU, which is one of the best GPUs one can find in a mobile device right now. It goes without saying that these two devices are completely future-proof, having the potential to flawlessly execute each and every app or game there is. The Note 3 does come with a bit more RAM as it packs 3GB versus the Z1's 2GB. That wouldn't make that much of a difference as long as you aren't trying to run a dozen of heavy apps on your smart device at the same time. When it comes to storage space, the Xperia Z1 comes with just 16GB of internal storage, while the Note 3 is offered in 32GB or 64GB flavors. This isn't such a problem though, having in mind that both handsets offer memory expansions through their microSD card slots. The Galaxy Note 3's on-screen QWERTY keyboard may be a bit more versatile as it features an additional row for numbers, but its landscape layout doesn't seem to be so comfortable to use due to the device's excessive width. The Note 3's portrait keyboard though is very comfortable for two-handed typing. Thankfully, you aren't out of luck in case you'd like to type with one hand only, as you can easily switch to a special layout designed to make it easy for you to type with just a thumb. On the other hand, the keyboard of the Xperia Z1 is quite good. We like its overall design and have experienced no issues with it. While the Galaxy Note 3 comes with two browsers, Chrome and the custom Samsung one, the Xperia Z1 has totally ditched any custom solutions in favor of Google's own browser, which is one of the best out there. Both the Xperia Z1 and Galaxy Note 3 sport up-to-date cellular radios with support for LTE Category 4, which translates to 4G speeds of up to 150 megabits downlink and 50 megabits uplink. Should you not have access to LTE, there's always HSPA Plus support for download speeds of up to 42.2 megabits per second and upload of up to 5.76 megabits up. Aside from these standard connectivity features, the Note 3 keeps adding more and more as it also packs NFC, MHL and infrared port, while the Z1 only has NFC. The Xperia Z1 comes packing some impressive camera hardware for a smartphone. For starters, there is a 20.7 megapixel sensor with a size of 1/2.3 inches, while the Galaxy Note 3's 13 megapixel camera has a sensor size of 1/3 inches, which is smaller. Meanwhile, the Z1's aperture is also quite wide at f2.0, which is a bit better than the Note 3's f2.2. In terms of camera UI, both handsets are quite versatile and convenient to use at the same time. The Xperia Z1 does manage to trump the Note 3 a bit in the comfort department due to its better organized camera settings, but the Galaxy Note 3 kind of makes up for it with the plethora of different modes that it offers, such as Beauty Face, Night, Best Face, Best Photos, Sports, and so on. Turning our attention to the images themselves, we notice that the Xperia Z1 tends to produce even better pictures than the Galaxy Note 3, which is a wonderful camera phone on its own. In-focus details are significantly sharper in the 20.7 megapixel photos taken with the Xperia Z1. There is still a noticeable amount of noise, but on the whole, the data captured by the Z1 is a bit more substantial than what you can get out of the Galaxy Note 3 snapper. Colors are another interesting area to observe, as the Z1's photos are usually more realistic looking. That's not to say that those from the Galaxy Note 3 are bad, quite the contrary, but they are a bit too contrasty. However, we definitely don't like the way the Z1 overexposes certain brightly lit areas, which otherwise appear fine when captured with the Galaxy Note 3. Indoor pictures are great with both phones. There is once again a bit more detail with the Xperia Z1, but there is also a slightly higher amount of noise. Still, the Z1 does seem to manage the color balance better in lower lit scenarios. Comparing the power of the LED flashes, the one on the Z1 has the upper hand as it's capable of illuminating slightly more of the scene in front of the camera. When it comes to video recording, both handsets can go up to 1920 by 1080 resolution, but the Note 3 steps things up by offering smoother 60 fps video recording as well as 4K video recording at 30 fps. In order to enjoy the 4K video footage, however, users have to own a 4K compatible display. There is a bit more sharpness and contrast to the image quality of the Note 3's video, while the Z1 once again sticks to a slightly more realistic image. There isn't such a big difference between the two though. The Sony Xperia Z1 and Samsung Galaxy Note 3 are true multimedia powerhouses, but naturally the bigger screen of the phablet will be even better for stuff like watching video or playing games, though the differences in the image quality are still valid. Once again, users will have to decide if they would prefer the Galaxy Note 3's contrasting and vivid visuals or the Xperia Z1's more natural color balance. As far as music playback is concerned, you have Google's Play Music app with both, as well as Sony's and Samsung's custom music players, respectively. Both of them are good and represent what the company stands for. Samsung's music app sports lots of settings and features, while Sony's music Walkman player is cleaner and a bit more modern. Both handsets come with high-quality earphones, with those of the Xperia Z1 managing to output a slightly better sound. Other than that, neither pair of earphones is very convenient to use. The loudspeakers of the Z1 and the Note 3 don't seem capable of outputting above average sound, and that's pretty much all you're going to get with them. Average sound quality, but the Note 3 does manage to gain the upper hand with its slightly clearer and louder sounding. Honestly, we aren't blown away by any of these two handsets when it comes to sound quality during calls. In terms of loudness, they're both pretty decent, but don't expect to hear any deep or natural sounding tones through their earpieces. Still, the Note 3 tends to sound slightly better. Having done our own battery test with both phones, we found the Note 3's battery to be slightly longer lasting. Our battery test is designed to replicate typical real-world usage, and although it can be 100% representative of the actual battery life users are going to experience, it's bound to give us a good idea of how the devices are going to perform in real life. So the Note 3 managed to remain active for about 6 hours and 8 minutes, while the Z1 powered itself off after about 4 hours and 42 minutes. That's quite a difference, indicating that in most cases, the Note 3 should be able to remain alive for a bit longer than Sony's offering. At the end of the day, which one should consumers go for? The Note 3 phablet or the Z1 smartphone? It turns out that it's actually not that easy to answer this, as it's not simply a matter of size. If the two handsets were mostly equal in what they do, then the bulkiness of the Xperia Z1 would have probably pushed us into the Note 3's direction. However, the Xperia Z1 is quite a solid contender that's able to give the Note 3 a run for its money in almost all categories. Sure, it's bulky for a smartphone with a 5-inch display, but it's still a bit smaller and more compact than the Note 3. Its display is significantly smaller but produces higher quality visuals. The Z1's camera is about equal or slightly better in some scenarios, while the software on it has a more mature and streamlined look. All of this doesn't mean that the Note 3 is an inferior product, of course. The Note 3 is probably the best phablet money can buy right now, and it really has no major flaws. So what we mean is that both handsets are very good at what they want to be. So it really comes down to your personal preferences, and if you want a bigger screen, simply get the Note 3. If you'd prefer a more solid construction and exquisite design, get the Z1. At the end of the day, both feature top-notch hardware and tons of features to keep you busy, so you really can't go wrong with either of them. Thank you for watching our comparison between the Galaxy Note 3 and Xperia Z1. But if you want to learn even more about them, visit us at phonearena.com.